We've implemented our search functionality using NSURLConnection. This worked well for the single method we've implemented, but we still have a couple more to go. What's our service code going to look like when we need to differentiate between the various requests and responses? Well, simply put, it's going to look pretty ugly. Minimally, we would have a lot of conditional logic to differentiate between the various requests. But what about if we needed to create another service class? Are we really going to want to duplicate all of those NSURLConnection delegate calls over and over? Well, hopefully you've answered no. You'll quickly find that working directly with NSURLConnection this way doesn't really scale very well. A good OO rule of thumb is don't repeat yourself, and using NSURLConnection the way we currently are means we'll quickly violate that rule. Instead, let's factor out this code into its own class to make it more reusable and easier to use. So I'll highlight the services group, type Command N, select Objective-C class, and I'll call this class HTTP GET request. It'll be a subclass of NSObject, and click Create. So I'll switch to the header, and in the header let's define a couple type defs for our success and failure blocks. Just like we did in our music store service, we're using this type def functionality to make working with these blocks a little easier. I've got a success block that passes an NS data, and a failure block that passes an NS error. I'll create an initializer called initWithURL success block failure block, and a method called startRequest to actually kick off the request. Switch over to the implementation. I'll create a class extension to define some private properties. So I'll create a property for my success block, failure block, the URL, so the three things that we're passing in the init method. And just like we did in our music store service, we'll define a property for our URL connection and our mutable data. Go and synthesize those. I'll implement initWithURL, and we'll simply set those properties. In the startRequest method, we'll create an NSURL request based on the URL that was passed in, initialize our mutable data, and create our connection just like we did in the music store service. I'll implement the various connection delegate methods. So did receive response, same implementation as before. Did receive data, same as before. In the connection did fail with error call, I'll nil out the response data in the connection, and then I want to actually invoke the failure block so that we can notify the caller. And finally, in connection did finish loading, I'm going to invoke the success block, passing the response data that we've accumulated. Alright, we now have a nice reusable wrapper class for issuing GET requests. There's a fair amount of robustness we would want to add to this class before using it in a production app, but the basic behavior is all there, and this will certainly make it easier for us to implement our current and upcoming functionality.